Nice and quiet. Ain't that great? Finally being able to relax instead of doing stuff. Man, it sure is nice. Uh-huh. What do you mean one more videos? I just posted one like 2, 3, 16 weeks? It's been that long? Those circuits, man. I need to post something before people think I got decommissioned. Alright, crew, y'all ready?
Yep. Yeah, sure. Yep. Right. Yeah.
Well, let's get in any project, game, video, drawing, or anything that involves creativity, really, there are always some limitations that have to be followed, some rules that define the project as what it is, and these aren't necessarily to limit creativity, far from it actually. For everybody and their cat knows by now that the worst enemy of an artist is a blank canvas, and drawing the line on what should and should not be possible is essentially what defines art. But I'm not here to talk about what is and isn't art, I'm here to talk about how do people define it. And as it turns out, there's a lot more that goes into this than I originally expected. And that's a very nice segue into every world begins knowing what can be done and what cannot. The artist draws the line, and by doing so, they divide the infinite from the possible. Now, a limitation doesn't have to be something imposed by the creator though. There are always some limitations that you just cannot get rid of, like monetary, hardware, legal, etc. Although, this isn't to say that all limitations aren't imposed by the creator. In fact, most limitations are, like dimensions, art style, software, code, time, mechanics, story, lore, emotion, genre. The point is, most limitations are decided by the creator. Like me, but I already explained much of that in my other video. But for now, how about we show you an example? Now this is a blank canvas, I know, it's scary. But how about we put some limitations down, like pixel grid? Now this might already be enough for some people, I mean just look up pixel art online and you'll find countless examples. But how about we limit ourselves a little bit more? How about we define a max resolution? Now we've defined what and where something can be drawn. And how about now we add a limited color palette? Now we define how, where, and what can be drawn. Now pause. See how this looks weirdly nice? How this doesn't look like a hardware limitation anymore, but an artistic choice? And well, if you question that as much as I have, then that would fall into the next chapter, the second act. Every pixel, every glitch, every missing dimension, there was space for imagination. What was absent invited us to complete it ourselves. When games have a very low resolution, they give the player the creative freedom to imagine how the character looks, how they act, how they are. They let the player think however they want, and the creator has a special task to make the game understandable without breaking the player's immersion. But a pixelated grid isn't the only limitation that used to be a hardware one, now it's a creative choice. We also have the two-dimensional dream. You know how every single game in the 90s used to be 3D? Like, every single game? I mean, nowadays there seems to be an opposition of sorts. Like, you know how the most popular game of the last decade has been 2D? I mean, yeah, there are some 3D bangers like Portal 2 or Team Fortress 2, but if I ask you to think of the best game of the 21st century, you'll most likely think of a 2D game. And my best theory tells me that that was most likely caused by indie games like Cuphead, Super Meat Boy or Hollow Knight, and for good reason. For all these games haven't captured perfectly what a Metroidvania-style game should be. They're a beautiful collage of creativity and artistic intent put together into a single piece of award-winning media. They have received the praise they deserve. I mean, just look up Cuphead or Hollow Knight online and you'll find millions upon millions of YouTube videos praising them. But these games are not an isolated example, there are lots of other great games that limit themselves to a second dimension and or a limited color palette, but what made these games special is something else that I haven't talked about yet, and that being that any indie game made in the last 20 years or so has broken the rules of what is possible with a game engine. Examples like Minecraft and a simple box of graphics and limited pixel grid, or the DLC's meta horror, or even Celeste's emotional challenge. Not only do these games rewrite what a game should be, but they also broke what a game should mean. How in the modern world creativity is often overlooked. But these games embrace it. They use creativity as their core. What this essentially means is that games are no longer just a way to have fun, they're a way to see the world through the eyes of a hero. And what I've talked about is not only limited to games. As I said in the beginning, everything that requires even the slightest piece of creativity has limits. A great example are films. And notice how I said films and not movies, and I'll maybe explain that later, but for now, what you need to know is that films suffer the same exact challenges as a game may face. They too have to go from vision to idea to script to visuals to actually making the damn thing. Movies like Into the Spider-Verse, The Bad Guys, or even short films like anything in Newgrounds really, use limitation as the lumber and the burning fire that is creative intent. And these are just barely looking into a very slim part of the creative realm. We can also dive into the films or games that due to absurdly low budgets limit themselves and end up making bank with their success. Films like the Blair Witch Project or games like Hungry Night, which let's not talk about that one. And we can also dive into the world of regular art, like paintings and such. For example, there's minimalism. When done well, it's a beautiful example of a limitation forcing creative solutions. Not only does it limit yourself to a low amount of strokes or colors, it also makes each stroke or color feel oh so much more meaningful. And why this might be, you might ask? Well, because of one of my other points I'll make here. How when given infinite choice and complete freedom, you'll face a single blaring problem. And that being that, well, when given infinite choice, everything can happen, and therefore everything ends up being meaningless. In the end, what's the point of doing something if you can just do it later? But this should be a great segue into the next act of this video.
To be limitless is to be lost, so we draw lines not to cage ourselves but to find form within the chaos. A universe without boundaries is just light without nowhere to shine.
Have you ever played a sandbox game and gotten bored? Like, really quickly? If you have, well you're not alone then, cause that's what I call the infinite choice paralysis. And what this essentially means is that a creator with infinite power faces one problem. Everything is possible and therefore nothing is meaningful. How when you're left to figure out what to do, you kinda just don't. For example, let's use Gary's mod. My experience with the game was this. I got the game, played it for 3 days non-stop, got bored, and then made play it again. And this is pretty much why people love putting rules to themselves. Because when you challenge your creativity, you are more inclined to use it to its full potential. Now art itself is something that needs limitations, like when using AI for example. AI, although it's much easier, faster and cheaper than drawing by hand, a lot of people still prefer drawing by hand. They prefer to buy drawing tablets, expensive painting supplies or software to draw with. So maybe the greatest creative act isn't breaking the limits, but it's instead knowing where to draw them. And while that might be an interesting area to cover, I really need to finish this video before my render times hit triple digits again. It has been a long time since I last posted. I know that. I realize that. It's been 16 weeks, which is an average, which is around, hold on, it's around 4 months. It's been 4 months at least since last posted. I know, yeah, it's been a while generally. It is kind of annoying that I post so little, but trust me, I'm working on it. Every single video takes so long to make, it takes so long to animate, and I really appreciate you guys waiting for me. Genuinely, it feels nice to know that people are waiting for my content, that they enjoy it, and I thank you guys for that genuinely. Another thank you I would like to give is to my friends for encouraging me and for being the voices that you hear in the background. Those yeps and all goods weren't me. If you couldn't tell, those are my friends actually. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, because it did take way too long of my time and my life. Apparently it's been 4 months, you know, but as a reward for you guys for staying here, hearing me yap, I'll give you guys one little something and that being my bloopers. It's been too fun genuinely collecting all these. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. A beautiful collage of creativity and artistic enchantment. They are whatever. I don't care at this point. You know, I may just give up at this point. I don't care. Damn. But these games are not an isolated example. There are lots of other great games that limit the sounds to a second dimension and or limited pixel greater color palette. Slow the down, dog. Okay, take two. Take two. But these games are not an isolated example. There are lots of other great games that limit themselves to a second dimension and or a limited color palette and a pixel grid. Take three. Take three. And what I've talked about is not only limited to games. Not only does it limit yourself to a low amount of strokes or colors, it makes each stroke or color so